The Books of Thoth, Chapter 11, from Magicians of the Gods by Graham Hancock. This audio presentation is read and voiced by Shakim Bra. It is provided to the public by Amun-Ra University. A quick summary. The Edfu building texts speak of the homeland of the primeval ones, an island, the location of which is never specified, that was destroyed by an enemy, described as a serpent, the great leaping one. The serpent's assault caused a flood that inundated this primeval world of the gods, killing the majority of its divine inhabitants. A few of them, however, escaped the disaster and fled the scene in boats to wander the earth. Their purpose in so doing was to identify suitable sites where they might set in motion a sacred design to bring about the resurrection of the former world of the gods, the recreation of a destroyed world. And all of these events took place in the early primeval age, a very, very long time ago, so long ago that they would have passed beyond human remembering if great efforts had not been made to preserve them. The Egyptian priest reportedly told Salon that, "In our temples, we have preserved from earliest times a written record of any great or splendid achievement or notable event which has come to our ears." This was the case too at Edfu, where Raymond's detailed study reveals that a vast and extensive archive once existed, from which the extracts were taken, that the priest carved into the temple walls, and that thus still survive. It is by following the trail of clues in these extracts, as we did before, that we have finally arrived at the Great Sphinx, perhaps the very lion which had the face of a man that Horus was said in the Edfu text to have transformed himself into. Interestingly enough, the book of Ezekiel mentions the 4 living creatures who had 4 faces. In this context, the reference in the inventory stela to Khufu having access to plans of the Sphinx, which he refers to when he restores the statue, is suggestive of the existence of an ancient archive of Giza, perhaps an archive dating back to the remote age, when the site was founded by the gods with distinctive astronomical characteristics that would later allow the whole complex to be described as a book which descended from the sky. Does this book refer to the constellation of Leo as it appeared at dawn on the spring equinox in the epoch of 10,500 BC, a constellation that descended from the sky at Giza in the form of the Great Sphinx? And did the 3 belt stars of the constellation of Orion, as they looked in that distant epoch, descend from the sky at Giza in the form of the ground plans of the 3 Great Pyramids? We've seen that the Sphinx, or at any rate large parts of it, could very well have been carved in the timeline of 10,500 BC. The pyramids were certainly completed much later, but it's my belief that they were built over pre-existing structures dating back to the time of the gods whom the Edfu texts tell us quite explicitly were capable of uniting with the sky. These pre-existing structures would of course have been hidden when they were replaced by the pyramids, amongst them the original natural hill that anchors the whole plan, and which later incorporated into the structure of the Great Pyramid. Since the Edfu texts envisage the work of the gods as the recreation in other lands of their lost world, and since the key feature of that lost homeland was a primeval temple that was erected on a low mound, it becomes all the more likely they would have sought to reproduce these features. At any rate, no lesser authority than Professor I.E.S. Edwards formerly keeper of Egyptian antiquities at the British Museum, was of the view that the natural hill now incorporated within the Great Pyramid was indeed the great primeval mound that is referred to so often in ancient Egyptian texts. A mound we now understand that drew its sanctity from its predecessor, that had once stood in the lost world of the gods. That mound, Raymond tells us, formed the original nucleus of the world of the gods in the primeval age, so it follows that the rocky mound at the heart of the Great Pyramid, and later the Great Pyramid itself, served the same function in the project to resurrect that lost world in Kemet. The inventory stela is by no means the only testimony to the existence of ancient plans connected with that project. We have seen in the Edfu text how these plans were part of an archive believed to have been set down in writing by the wisdom god Thoth, according to the words of the sages. So it is not surprising that the ancient Egyptians of later times became obsessed with the books of Thoth, which they appear to have lost access to, and which came to be regarded as the fount of all knowledge. A number of papyri have survived, documenting searches for the books of Thoth, and these searches, not surprisingly, are always said to have taken place in the vicinity of Giza and the Memphite necropolis. There is, for example, the story of Sedna-u-Kayim Uwast, a son of Ramesses II, one of the great pharaohs of the 13th century BC. Informed that a book written by Thoth himself lay concealed in an ancient tomb near Giza, Sedna-u went there with his brother and passed 3 days and nights seeking for the tomb, and on the 3rd day they found it and went down to the place where the book was. When the 2 brothers came into the tomb, they found it to be brilliantly lit by the light which came forth from the book. There seems to be a hint of ancient technology here, reminiscent of Yima's underground Vara, which glowed with its own light, or of the mysterious illumination of Noah's Ark, described previously in chapter 7. What sound like the artifices of a lost technology are also mentioned in Arab traditions concerning Giza. The Egyptian historian Ibn Abd el-Hakim believed that the pyramids were built as places of safekeeping for antediluvian knowledge, prominently including the archives of books containing the profound sciences and the names of drugs and their uses and herbs, and the science of astrology and arithmetic and geometry and medicine, and everything that is and shall be from the beginning to the end of time. Hakim, who lived in the 9th century AD, could have known nothing of advanced metallurgy or plastics, yet he stated that amongst the treasures from the time before the flood that were hidden away in the bowels of the pyramids were arms that did not rust and glass which might be bent but not broken. He likewise described machines that guarded these antediluvian remnants, including an idol of black agate sitting upon a throne with a lance. His eyes were open and shining. When anyone looked upon him, he heard on one side of him a voice which took away his sense, so that he fell prostrate upon his face and did not cease until he died. A second machine also took the form of a statue. He who looked towards it was drawn by the statue until he stuck to it and could not be separated from it until such time as he died. Returning to the traditions of the ancient Egyptians themselves, we have a text from the West Kar Papyrus, which dates to the Middle Kingdom, around 1650 BC, but was copied from an older document now lost. The text makes reference to a building called Inventory, located in the sacred city that the ancient Egyptians knew as Enu, that the Bible calls Om, and that the Greeks later made famous under the name of Heliopolis, the city of the sun, 11 miles northeast of Giza. According to the papyrus, a chest of flint was stored in Heliopolis containing a mysterious document that Pharaoh Khufu himself is reported to have spent much time searching for, a document that recorded the number of the secret chambers of the sanctuary of Thoth, which Khufu wished to copy for his temple. What are we dealing with here? I.E.S. Edwards points out that Heliopolis, the site of the inventory building, had been a center of astronomical science, closely connected to Giza since time immemorial, and that the title of the high priest of that city was chief of the astronomers. To this, the Egyptologist F.W. Green adds that the inventory building appears to have been a chart room at Heliopolis, or perhaps a drawing room where plants were made and stored. Similarly, Sir Alan H. Gardner argues that the room in question must have been an archive and that Khufu was seeking for details concerning the secret chambers of the primeval sanctuary of Thoth. So once again, we are confronted by a report that Khufu sought out and consulted ancient documents to guide his works at Giza, whether to restore the Sphinx to its original appearance, as we are told in the inventory stela, or to build his temple in the correct way, incorporating an ancient design, as the West Car Papyrus suggests. Such traditions, in my view, further strengthen the notion that whatever Khufu and the other pharaohs of the 4th dynasty were doing at Giza was more of the order of the fulfillment and completion of plans they had inherited from the time of the gods, antediluvian plans, in other words, than the implementation of some novel scheme of their own. They were, in short, playing their part in the resurrection of the former world of the gods.